welcome to Popcorn Anatomy. My name is Ursula, and before I start, I want to get a couple things out of the way. I know I haven't uploaded in a while, and I am sorry for that. My work and my personal life have been keeping me really busy, but I'm happy to be back. As you can see, I'm trying something different today. I'm going to attempt what some people are now calling video essays, which is more of an analytical essay type thing that not only attempts to analyze the thematical parts of movies, but also the different aspects of filmmaking. So, Elysium. Elysium is a movie that came out 4 years ago, so I know that it's weird that I felt compelled to make a video about it now, but the thing is, I didn't watch it when it came out 4 years ago. I watched it last month for the first time, and wow, it wasn't what I expected at all. If you enjoyed this movie, then you're not going to like what I'm gonna say here, so you might want to leave. If you haven't watched the movie yet, then I don't recommend it, but if you want to watch it anyway, then I suggest you leave as well, because there will be spoilers. Because I don't have an intro for this essay, I guess I'll start right now. So there's not a single character in Elysium that undergoes a proper character development. Like, we at no point get any sort of an explanation for why the character wants to do what he does. Like, yeah, we know that Max wants to go up there so that he can be cured, but why does he want to get cured? Like, what does he have to live for? He doesn't have any sort of attachments to anyone that are shown in depth, other than like what the film tells us is his love interest, but their relationship isn't explored almost at all, apart from like a flimsy backstory at the beginning that makes us think she's going to be a lot more attached to him in the film than what she really ends up being. And apart from her, like, the closest thing we get to a personal attachment in the film is his relationship with his friend Julio, who dies at the beginning before he's even fleshed out properly. So it isn't established that Max has any sort of personal attachments to anyone or anything for that matter, not because his character is made up to be like grim or bitter or anything, but simply because they don't develop it properly again. So another way they could have gone is to simply make this movie about a man and his will to live. So rather than giving him a physical reason or a motive to do what he does, make it a movie about willpower and the human spirit, etc. But that would have meant like digging deep into his thought process and making this more of an existential thing, like The Stranger by Albert Camus or something like that. But Elysium doesn't do any of that, so it's not that kind of a movie either. He just lives sort of a crappy life on the wrong side of a dystopian world, and then all of a sudden he gets sick and goes, okay, yeah, well, I should get that fixed. And that's like his only reason to go up there now. The movie, I guess, tries to establish the fact that Max has always wanted to live in Elysium since he was little, but he makes absolutely no effort to do so until he's kind of forced to because he got sick, and he decides that the only way to cure his illness is to go up there and use the healing machines that they have, or whatever. And I'll get back to Max's character in a second, but let's move on to a couple other ones. There's none of the characters really have anything going for them. Jodie Foster plays this villainous politician named Delacourt, and Delacourt seems promising at the start, like reminiscent of like Marine Le Pen or something, but the character doesn't have time to really develop much at all before she's killed in an event that pretty much goes against everything we're supposed to believe about how ruthless she is. We don't know much about Delacourt's vision or her personal life or why she does what she does either. Like, the only time we ever really see her give a reason for being such a cold-hearted bitch is when she says letting poor people into Elysium would be dangerous and it would be bad for the children, which is just regular far-right politician speech, and that's good, but we never find out like her true personal motives. It just feels like we might eventually find out until she dies, and the guy who, plot twist, ends up being the real bad guy is one that we don't get to know almost at all. So Jodie Foster's villain felt more compelling to us and more suggestive to the far-right rhetoric that the film criticizes, but she was replaced by like this extremist sort of revolutionary type who was even less constructed than she was. They spend several scenes trying to build her up, only to kill her off immediately in order to make room for this new bad guy who they spent absolutely no time trying to develop. Like, Delacourt was underdeveloped, but the reason I'm cutting her some slack is because at least the screenwriters were beginning to go somewhere with her until she's gone all of a sudden. Agent Kruger, the guy who takes over, is this character who we know absolutely nothing about other than he's a sleeper agent for Delacourt who ends up wanting power because, why not? Like, we know nothing about what led him to make this brash decision of killing his boss. He could have been a really compelling bad guy with like a backstory that makes you understand where he's coming from and what led him to his boiling point. He could have been like Bane from The Dark Knight Rises, like a terrorist revolutionary, But instead, we get this half-assed character that we know nothing about and who we're supposed to care about now that he's taken over the role of villain. When I watched Delacourt's death scene, my mind went back to the Hunger Games because her character was similar to President Snow, but once again, less developed. So the scene felt kind of like what we would get in a movie in which President Snow gets overthrown, not by an equally corrupt politician, but by a lower class terrorist, but then instead of it being like this badass terrorist revolutionary with an interesting character arc like Bane, he's just this slimy, sleazy sewer rat of a character who, one, doesn't seem half as menacing as the original villain, and two, feels more like someone Max would have to get rid of before fighting the final boss. And speaking of mini-bosses, Carlisle was another character who we sort of think is going to be this greater menace in the film, especially upon seeing his ruthlessness at the beginning. We think he's supposed to be this great asset to Delacourt, but no, he dies like immediately. And so Carlisle was one of those characters who was definitely less significant, but who could have still used a little more fleshing out. And I would maybe argue that that's the same case with Julio. Like, all we know about Julio is that he is Max's friend and he likes to steal cars. We don't get to learn much else about him or what his connection to Max is because guess what? He dies. The writers in this movie have a serious problem with killing off the damn characters before they get to develop them any further. And so the problem transcends further into other aspects of filmmaking process that are crucial to the making of this movie. If you go online and you look at all of the negative reviews that the film got, you will see the following criticisms over and over and over again. 1, too many action scenes that weren't interesting enough, and we're not going to talk about that in this video. 2, an awful script with bad development of the characters and the storyline, which is what this video is essentially about. And 3, the acting. It was pretty interesting to me because this film stars a bunch of critically acclaimed heavyweight actors who are all good in everything we see them in, yet even they couldn't make the characters work for this movie. Sharlto Copley, Wagner Moda, and Diego Luna are all great, and they brought their acting chops to the table here, but their characters all seemed overacted because there wasn't much dimension to the roles any of them were playing. So for them to put so much emotion into characters that weren't meant to be deep just didn't end up working out for the project. But it's not like it was their fault that they didn't each have enough of a character to interpret here. Jodie Foster's character received a lot of criticism. Some attributed this to the same problem I mentioned just now, that she was overacting to make up for a character that just didn't have depth. And others thought that the film was wasting a perfect opportunity to use her to her full potential. I personally didn't think there was anything wrong with her performance per se, just that the film itself was bad and the character wasn't constructed well. So, one review that I read online stated that it felt as though the actors had all prepared in different rooms, and I thought that this was so true, especially when referring to Matt Damon and Alice Braga, who were supposed to be playing love interests, but there is zero chemistry between them because both actors seem to be on a different page entirely regarding where their characters seem to be in the relationship. Again, it wasn't particularly their fault, there just wasn't much to infer from the script, and the director could definitely have oriented them better about what sort of a dynamic he wanted between them. So there's that. And the film also has a hero problem. I told you guys I'd be getting back to the character of Max, Matt Damon's character, the protagonist, and so we're back. Max doesn't want to help anyone and only thinks of himself, which goes against what a hero is. People are going to argue that he was meant to be more human, or whatever that means, but the truth is that he never really gets a change of heart. The reason that the other two characters get to Elysium is because Kruger got them on the ship, not because Max does anything at all to help them. In the end, he does help them, but because they're all forced to help each other out, and then Max dies, just the way everyone else in this movie does before they grow an arc. So the fact that Max isn't willing to help anyone also goes against what we're supposed to believe about his relationship with Frey, the girl. In fact, what I think the film tries to show us is that he's had feelings for her since forever, but she doesn't know she has feelings for him, and she's just beginning to realize that she does. That's what the filmmakers were trying to establish from the beginning of the movie, but the characters' actions show us otherwise. Max makes it clear that he won't be taking Frey and her daughter to Elysium, and like I said, doesn't seem to regret his decision at all. Yet Frey is caring towards him in every scene we see them in. It almost feels as though his character doesn't really give a shit about her, yet that clearly wasn't the intention. We're supposed to believe that he does, and it's more the other way around. And now that we're on the topic of Matt Damon, the casting choice was terrible. Not that I have anything against Matt Damon, he's a great actor, but the role wasn't meant for him. Correct me if I'm wrong, but wasn't his character supposed to be Hispanic? Because his last name was Da Costa. Like, I'm not arguing, oh, whitewashing. I'm just saying, I'm not trying to be politically correct or anything, or arguing, that his last name was in Spanish. He was Hispanic. And even if they did have an explanation for that, it just doesn't make much sense for the film to be about a white guy in a setting where everyone else is Latino. The movie's supposed to be about the inequities of what we see in so many first world countries. It was meant to allude to racism and privilege and the right to things like healthcare, immigration, etc. I'm not putting my own political views into this video, I'm just saying that's what the director, Neil Blomkamp, wanted the movie to be, and said that that's what the movie was about. And he was unsuccessful in carrying this idea out because the main character, who's supposed to represent the minority, was played by a white guy who couldn't pronounce the words in Spanish correctly. It's not just the characters who were badly developed then, it's the idea behind the entire movie. Hiring Matt Damon to play Max Da Costa is what it would have been like to hire a black guy to play John McCain. It just doesn't work out. So, I'm getting a little too ahead of myself here because the video is about the poor development of the characters in Elysium and not particularly about the casting. But that brings me to my next point. Back to the argument of how underdeveloped the characters were, there's one character who I couldn't help but think would have made a better protagonist in this movie, and that one's Frey. Frey is the girl I mentioned a couple times who was supposed to be Max's love interest. Frey wasn't developed enough to be the main character here because all of the characters were underdeveloped, but she still had more going for her than Max did. Like, at least she had more of a motive to get up to Elysium. She wasn't doing this for herself, she was doing it for her daughter. That was her reason to survive. Max didn't have a reason to survive. Also, she embodies the persona of a hero better because, as I said, she's selfless and she's doing what she does for somebody else, whereas Max is made out to be kind of selfish. And lastly, she's a minority, and this movie is about minorities, whether you like it or not. So if they had fleshed her out a bit more, she would have been the perfect hero for this movie. And that's just one way they could have gone with this. The other way would have been to work on Max's character better, make his relationship with the other characters clearer, give him a reason to live, make him a proper hero, and then hire the right actor to play him. Anyway, Elysium, just not the best movie I've ever seen. No hate towards anyone in it. I actually like Neil Blomkamp. I liked Chappie. Some would argue that Chappie was worse than Elysium, but I don't know. I got my reasons to like Chappie. District 9 was pretty good. So yeah, hopefully you liked this video. If you did, give it a like, subscribe. If you want to, you don't have to. Hopefully you did though, and I will see you next week. Bye! Seriously, please go.